when it comes to shame, the thing I want to say before I leave you is don't criticize your past self. Don't judge your past self. Don't shit on your past self. You cannot love who you are today if you are still shaming, judging, and criticizing past versions of you. You can't. It's not possible. Because who you are today is an accumulation of everything that's happened in your life. Even if you did something horrendous. I cheated on a girl that I loved, who I was with I'm not going to name the number, with a lot of other women. And in my late 20s, I hated that guy, which made me develop other coping mechanisms and other wounded ways of living. But I had to go back and see that guy and understand why he even did what he did. Who was he in the moments that the shit happened? Like when whatever happened, happened. Who was he when he processed the shame? And when I looked at it, I found out that he was a guy who had such a wounded inner child, who was hurting from these wounds of like, had no validation in his life, was so alone, was in a new country with no support, with no friends, nothing, and desperately wanted connection. And so the easiest way for him to make that level of connection, which is scientifically true, is through sex, because that's how our bodies immediately send out like these physical hormones of like oxytocin, whatever, that temporarily make you feel validated and loved. So sex is extremely dangerous also because it can be such a quick shortcut escape from the deep problems that we're really going through. And that's how I became a sex addict, because I couldn't work on my own wounds. I didn't want to work on my own problems. I just chose to connect and jump in and have sex with people multiple times because it helped me run away from the lack of validation, the core wounds of abandonment. I had massive abandonment wounds living inside me, massive rejection wounds living inside me. And I had to first work on those wounds. And now who I am, it's so funny. I was having a deep conversation with a friend yesterday in inner work. And I'm like, dude, I don't even have sex anymore unless I meet someone who I know the first time we connect that I will meet them for at least 6 or 7 times more, based on their energy, based on the connection, based on their their love and their validation and the value of who they are. I have to know that they love themselves, otherwise I'm not wanting to have sex with them. And this is such a different change from the guy in my 20s. And so I'll go for like many months without even having like a sexual connection. And for me now, like my sexual connection is around relationships. I want to build a conversation and a story around sex and not just have sex to be like, okay, thank you and I'm good. No judgment for whichever way you do it. It depends on where you are in your life. But that's why you need to evaluate your past self and see, who was I when I did those things that I did? Give them compassion, give them understanding. That is your past version, your inner child who's dying and begging to listen, to be heard. And if you don't hear your past version of you, it's gonna fucking catch up. And you know what it means by catching up? You're gonna do the same shit over and over and over again. Like I said, that coming back to the sex addiction thing, when it happened the first time, I should have realized there was something missing for me and I needed to listen to it. And here's what's interesting. The something missing is not that your partner is not attractive enough and therefore you cheat on them. That's like just such a shitty excuse for us to want to like step into our wounds. The something missing was that I was so unfulfilled inside. And because I was unfulfilled inside, maybe I also settled for a partner who wasn't everything that I wanted, because I just wanted to not be alone. And so therefore there were more and more and more excuses to do what I did and step out of that. And like I said, sleep with other people and all of that bullshit. So you have to go back to that past version of you and understand, who was Yats when he was 24? Who was Yats and what was he going through? He was extremely popular. He was extremely loved on the surface. But deep down inside, he didn't have anyone really showing up for him for that emotional validation. Deep down inside, he still was hurting from the wounds with his mother of like someone who just could not show up for him emotionally at all. So naturally, Yats is now this guy who's like dying to get the emotional connection of like people all around him, especially women, because they represent that feminine energy that he didn't get growing up as a child. So if you're a woman and you find yourself in old Yats's position of like, wanting to sleep with multiple men just to get that level of validation, don't shame yourself. Don't shit on yourself. Don't call yourself a slut. Don't call your friend a slut. Everybody's going through something that creates the coping mechanism. Try and understand them. Try and understand you. And think to yourself, okay, why am I needing this high level of physical validation? Why am I needing so much of this connection with someone and validation, especially around my body? As you dig deeper, you'll find out that it's maybe because I don't see myself in that loving way. And I don't see myself in that loving way because I maybe never had that upbringing and that space and that environment that made me feel that I was beautiful just as I am. That's the number one thing we're missing. We're only beautiful, we're only valuable, we're only loved when we can serve a purpose for someone and for our parents. when we can fit into a space of their own approval. For example, when you take your A grade home, right, like from school, your A immediately goes on the fridge. Maybe mom cooks you a special dinner, blah blah blah. What happens when you come home with a C or a D, or you failed? Your fucking score doesn't go up on the fridge, unless they're trying to make an example. But immediately a child realizes that I'm only loved when I can be validated in a certain way by them. So that's when you start to maybe dress a certain way, you start going to church, doing whatever they really need, because that's how you get love. But when you get into your teens, that's when your subconscious mind is growing so fucking fast. Your ego is developing really fast in your teens as well, because by the time you're 18, all the identity of yourself is basically already complete. So you're growing to that mind where you're now trying to find an identity of yourself. So as a teenager, you're pushing away from the things you know. That's why teenagers get very rebellious. They get very angry. They get into different like things that they like or want to try out, like goth or this or that or whatever else. None of that shit should be judged. That stuff should just be given a safe space for expression, but healthy boundaries of what you can go within and what you can't go without, because that's how an adult can parent a child. That's how we have to parent ourselves. Once you give those versions of you love, you'll realize in the present moment that you start to become so much more grounded, so much more healed, so much more content, so much more like happy with yourself, so much more happy with other people, so much more forgiving of your past, so much more letting go of the traumas you were holding on to or other people held on to you with you, all of that stuff. So I am going to go now because I recognize my voice is tired. I just spoke at a conference for like an hour and something, which was amazing, and I was talking about reparenting right there. But if you really want to jump into a call around sex, trust, and intimacy and how you can build more special connection around those things, my membership group is going to have a call next Tuesday that I'm going to be doing live, and I'm going to be teaching. It's exclusively for the membership group. You can join for just $1. But if you're someone who wants to do that level of healing that's really, really deep, like if you're done with where you are in your life and space and you want that level of healing that can absolutely change your life, you're welcome to apply for the gauntlet. Like I said, we're filled up right now with applications, but you can speak to my team via the DM. So if you send me a DM and say, I'm really ready for this, and if you're capable of the timings we have to provide, and if you are ready for this type of work, then we're happy to take you in, provided it's not filled up already. The next batch starts in like 10 days, I think. So you can send me a DM if you really want to do that work, and my team will talk to you and figure out if you're ready for that space. But one thing to conclude before I leave, remember, shame, especially for women. Thank you very much for all the people who are giving me gratitude. I swear I'm not lying. I can actually feel my chest center and my heart chakra like expanding. I feel so much love and gratefulness and gratitude that people pick up what I'm putting down. That's what life is all about. The most symbiotic relationships in life are the ones where when you give something to someone, someone wants and is ready to receive what you have to give, and vice versa. So for me, I feel so grateful that like I'm doing this because I love to speak to people, I love to connect, and I love to give people healing insight that I've had in my own life. I'm not going to talk about shit I don't know ever. So I'm giving you what I know and feel, and if you all are ready to pick that up, it makes me feel like this is the perfect connection. It's so symbiotic. It's so beautiful that you've showed up in this moment, that I'm willing to show up, and vice versa. I get a lot from you as well. I get the fact that people are ready for this work, people want to do more about it, so I keep wanting to show up. So the last thing I want to conclude about shame is, and I talked about this, remember, especially if you identify as a woman or even as a man, shame stores heavily around your hips. It stores heavily around your sexual organs as well. And so shame will drastically limit your freedom of pleasure. Those are your pleasure centers. And shame will drastically limit the level of pleasure you can have in your life. Think about it. Have you ever been fun, joyful, happy, expressive, or connected when you've been in a deep shame space? No. It's actually the opposite. It makes you constricted, it shuts that down, it prevents it. So when you are feeling shame, through the mind, you need to work through forgiving yourself, compassion, and letting it go. But physically, you can also do movements that are in and around the hips. And those movements are, like I said, there's a lot of second chakra movements you can do. So Google that if you want, second chakra hip openers or second chakra movements. It's in Sanskrit, which is one of the oldest languages in the world. That's where my name's actually from. It's called Svadhisthana. Svadhisthana is the second chakra, which represents flow, creativity, femininity, trust, etc., which is why femininity, shame is stored there. So the feminine is the most suppressed when it comes to shame as well. So it's very easy to be very hyper masculine And so you can be just very straightforward, you can be serious, you can be aggressive, and all of that also when you feel shame. But it's very difficult to be playful, fun, joyful, and like creative. So dancing is so fucking healing. You're right. Creativity, playfulness, etc. Hey, and welcome to the Inner Yats YouTube page. If you like our content, make sure you click the like and the subscribe button so that you get more of these amazing videos that keep coming your way.